Okay, I believe we are on. And let's go. Let me hit the broadcast button. Okay, very good. All right. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Bernice Jenkins, and I am the Director of Financial Literacy for the Southern region of the National Association of Black Accountants, which we call NABA. And today I have with me Felicia Grant. Felicia is the Financial Literacy Director for NABA's Atlanta chapter, and she's been very helpful with also helping our regional efforts with our financial literacy campaign. Felicia will be with us to help with the Q&A session, which we will have for maybe our last 10 to 15 minutes of the hour. Will be available to take any questions that you have as it relates to financial literacy. So a few housekeeping items I want to mention. You should see, if you are joining us through Zoom, you should see a Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, or might be on the side of your screen. In that box, you should be able to type in any questions that you may have. So as Brandon goes through his presentation, if you have any questions, thing that you like to know a little bit more about, go ahead, put those questions out there. Felicia will be monitoring those questions and we will answer them towards the end of the session. For those that are joining us on YouTube that we're streaming, feel free in the comment box on YouTube, if you have any questions, go ahead and put that out there. And I will be monitoring that so that if there's anything that you'd like to discuss towards the end of the presentation, feel free to do so. So we talked last week that we have kicked off just, within the last 30 days, our financial literacy campaign. And this campaign, the focus is just to address the wealth gap that we are consistently seeing in our underserved communities, and especially in our African American household communities. And we talked about that there are some astounding statistics. The latest statistic that I've read mentioned that in the last 50 years, regardless of our economic and educational and social progress, our wealth position as an African American community has not changed, which I know that there may be some systemic issues, and we do not ignore that. But what we're here to address is the education portion, because maybe our community are not as abreast on how to make wiser decisions with our money. So last week we had Brandon Hunter to go through what a solid financial foundation looks like. And he will revisit that again today as well. But the goal of his presentation today is to give us 4 steps to just help us get started. So as he gives us those steps, think about your own personal situations. What can you do differently? What kind of changes that you may want to make so that you can make better decisions with your money. And if there's any questions that you have, if you're on YouTube, go ahead and throw that in the comment box. I'll be monitoring that. And then if you're us through, feel free to add your questions in the Q&A and we will address it there. So without further ado, I'm going to kick it off to our keynote speaker, Brandon. He will be sharing his screen, and Felicia and myself will drop off and allow him to run the show.
All right. So let me share my screen real quick. All right. Okay. So Brandon Hunter, and I'm a financial advisor with Northwestern Mutual. I've been an advisor since basically 2014, and I love it. People ask me a lot of times, why become a financial advisor? Um, and for me, um, I'll probably say it was a few things. Number one, I enjoy understanding money. And what I noticed growing up is most people, regardless of how much money they bring in, really don't understand how money is a tool, right? Just like anything else, right? Money is a tool. And a tool is only as effective as the person who uses the tool. So if you understand, how to use money, then money can do a lot for you. If you don't understand how to use money and how money works, then you're going to have a little bit of a tumultuous relationship with money. And so I wanted to be able to use what I've learned, what I've experienced, to help people. And um, like it was mentioned earlier, in our community, financial literacy, in my opinion, is a huge problem. um, and so I'm just doing my part in helping correct the ship, right? So with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into this. So this right here is a piece through Northwestern Mutual, Your Guide to Money Management. I really enjoy it because it really talks about how to start out when it comes to the thought process around financial planning. Okay. Um, so just starting from number one, so understand your cash flow. That's incredibly important. The reason why I say that is because your cash flow, your budget, what that is supposed to represent is really like your financial GPS, your financial roadmap, right? As an advisor, it's very hard for me to kind of understand the vision that you have long term in regards to what are you trying to accomplish financially, right? If we don't really understand your cash flow mechanics. So what I mean by cash flow and cash flow mechanics is just very simply how much money do you bring in on a monthly basis, how much money goes out on a monthly basis, and what's left over, right? And we're talking about being inclusive of everything. So if you're someone who gets like a quarterly bonus, that's information that we'd also want to take into account. If you get, a yearly bonus, a semi-annual bonus, just, um, if you do like part salary, part commission, again, all of this information is information that's needed in order to understand your financial picture. Okay. So let's go into that some more. So understanding your cash flow. So I'm not gonna like read everything off the page and stuff like that, just because I kind of feel like it's kind of boring. I want to keep things kind of interactive. Um, Plus, as you can tell, I like using my hands, so I'm expressive. But here's a really good way to think about your budget right here. Okay. So the 20-60-20 rule, some people call it the 80-20 rule when it comes to money, which very simply says that the majority of your money is already spent. Okay. The moment that you received it, the majority of your money is already spent. What this 20-60-20, what it's talking about is essentially 20% of your money is going to go towards discretionary things. So we're talking about eating out. We're talking about putting gas in your car. We're talking about, going out and just, enjoying life, different things of that nature, right? Where this expense is not a required expense. This is something that essentially you can control how much money you spend towards it. The 60 represents your fixed expenses. So these are your reoccurring expenses that you already know every single month you have to pay. So we're talking about mortgages, we're talking about rent, we're talking about, the light bill, phone bill, car insurance, things of that nature where it's like, hey, we already know the first of the month, hey, rent's due, right? First of the month, like, all right, let's go ahead and pay the mortgage and stuff like that. So that's what the 60 refers to. And then the last 20, what that represents or what it's supposed to represent is savings. So the last 20% of your money is supposed to be saved. Okay. Um, Now I put a little asterisk by saying saved, right? I say that because that does not automatically mean all of that 20% that you're saving needs to go inside of a bank account. Okay. That is just simply saying 20% is what should be dedicated towards not spending in some way, shape, or form. Okay. Um, so that's the 20-60-20 rule. Like I said, some people call it the 80-20 rule. And that's just because they combine the 60 from the fixed expenses and the 20 from the discretionary expenses. So they just simply say, hey, for every dollar that you bring in, 80 cents on that dollar is already spent before you've actually decided what you're going to do with it. Okay. So that's a good way to think about what most people go through when it comes to money. And to kind of put that in perspective, so as an advisor, my days are, how do I put it? They're not linear. Okay. What I mean by that is I'm kind of working with a ton of different demographics. One of the things that I've noticed, and I took note very early on, regardless if you're someone who's making, $50,000 or we're talking $500,000, the incomes may be different, but when you look at the actual spending percentage, it's almost identical. Most people spend the overwhelming majority of the money they bring in. So that 80-20 rule is pretty accurate. Okay. So this right here, I will go through this because, tips for conquering your budget. And I always like to preface the budget word because a lot of times when we're talking about money, when people hear the word budget, they kind of tense up, right? They kind of clench up a little bit because it makes them feel like, oh, well, I can't have fun. That's what that means. I can't live life, right? Tomorrow's not promised, so I want to enjoy. But when you say budget, it makes me feel like, oh, I can't spend any of my money, right? Well, for me, I'm always saying, just remember this, right? Your budget isn't necessarily telling you what you cannot spend. Your budget is more so telling you capacity, right? So how much can I afford to spend doing X, Y, Z? Okay. That's how I choose to look at the budgets, and that's how I try to teach people to look at a budget. Okay. So don't look at it as something that's holding you back. Look at it as something that is freeing to you, because with that knowledge of saying, oh, okay, so this is how much money that I have left over after I've paid all my fixed expenses. So now I know exactly what I have left. I can do what I want with this money as long as I don't spend more than what I have. You see what I'm saying? So now you're making educated decisions, and educated decisions are better than ill-informed decisions. Okay. So number one, write everything down. So track your spending. Okay. You'll be surprised at how much you spend in certain categories. Right off the bat, I'll tell you, one of the biggest reoccurring kind of like budget busters that I run into is eating out. The example that I give people is if you just said, hey, I spend $20 a day, and let's say that we're not counting the weekends, we're just simply talking Monday through Friday, right? So in a typical month, you have 20 of those days of Monday through Fridays. So $20 a day, 20 days, that's $400 for the month already. So we haven't done anything else. We just spent $20 a day. Okay. And so, like I said, like eating out is one of those moments where when I'm talking to people, it's kind of like an aha moment, because it's like, wow, I never realized I spent that much money. And so now we're finding money in the budget, right? We're finding money because that's discretionary. You can control how much you decide to spend on eating out. And so we're able to, make some corrections and improvements there, and as well as other areas. Pay only in cash. So this right here, I like that idea for someone who is really kind of starting out on kind of understanding their own financial independence. So if you're talking about like a college senior or a recent graduate, I think that is a smart play, because you want to be able to build healthy financial habits, right? So we want to be able to pay in cash, so that way, again, we have a clear understanding of the money that we have coming in and how much that we're spending. Okay. Now, I will tell you that after we have built that healthy habit, I would encourage people to then look into, okay, hey, let's look at credit cards. Let's understand how they work, okay, and see how they can work for you. And that's the key right there. Remember, money is a tool, so everything regarding money is a tool, right? So we would talk through how do we use a credit card in a way that it benefits us and is not being used in a way that actually hurts us, okay? So number three, so being more selective with daily deals and coupons. Um, a deal is a deal, right? I always tell people whether we're talking about a deal on food, a deal on something else that you were going to buy. If you were going to buy something, why not buy it on sale or buy it, on some sort of discount, right? So I encourage everybody to do that. And making tough choices. I think making tough choices is probably um, the piece where I spend the most time talking to people on, because when it comes to financial planning, if we are doing it right, you will be able to have your cake and eat it too. And that is one of my personal goals. I always try to be very transparent, be very open, be very honest with anyone that I'm talking to and explaining, like, hey, when it comes to finances, if we have a clear cut goal, we understand exactly what it is that you want to obtain or you want to reach. Well, then we know the big picture, right? So we know where we're going. We know the end goal. So now all we have to do is make sure that we do all of the steps in order to get there. And so we can do that in a way that, hey, we know the goal is attainable, it's achievable, we have a plan. We can also, have fun while we're doing it, right? So everything doesn't have to be like either I have to stick to a financial plan, but I can't have fun. Like, no, you can still do both. Like there is a space where you can still do both, right? It's all about having a plan though. And that's the biggest piece. So we're going to move on to the next page right here. And so all it does is just kind of break down exactly what I just mentioned about, the 20-60-20. And so I won't really, go over that. Um, the only thing that I will bring up though is this particular piece about housing. So this is something that I've run into before with clients and people that I've sat down with before, which is their housing costs. Whether we're talking about rent, whether we're talking about a mortgage, typically the range that you want to kind of keep things at is somewhere between 20 to 30%. So what I mean by that is you want your rent or you want your mortgage to be somewhere around 20 to 30% of your monthly check. Okay. You don't want to be in situations where you're above 30%. When you're talking about 40 or 50% of your check goes towards housing, we're kind of in a world of trouble. I say that because if 50% of your money is going towards housing, then I can already tell you we're probably not saving any money because most of your money is probably being spent, right? So the rule of thumb, we want to stay under 30% when it comes to housing costs. Okay. All right. So this right here is just an example, and it's an example of a young single person. So Jessica is single. She earns $50,000 a year. She has $3,000 in credit card debt and $10,000 in college loans debt. So she's contributing pre-tax dollars to her 401k, and looks like she's paying $9,400 in payroll taxes. Okay, so she's basically bringing in somewhere around $3,100 a month. So what they do right here is they're breaking down, okay, like how much of her money is going towards, again, her fixed expenses, okay? How much is going towards discretionary expenses? How much is going towards savings and investing, okay? So there we go. So you can see it a little bit better. So what you see right here, saving and investing. So she's putting 15% of her money towards savings and investing. And so just to be clear, make sure we're on the same page, 15% of that $3,100 number. Okay. So what she's doing is she has an emergency fund, which is, some people, again, savings account. Some people call it a rainy day fund, an emergency fund. Like I mentioned last week, some people call it shoebox money, right? Or mattress money. That's another one. So Jessica will set aside $300 per month, okay, to build an emergency fund. Her goal is somewhere between saving 9,000 to 18,000, okay? And this is because she wants to have built up in cash, she wants to have 3 to 6 months of expenses. For a 401k, she's investing $250 per month, which is the equivalent of 6% of her check. And right here, so because a 401k allows you to contribute pre-tax dollars, she is contributing 6% of her gross or total pay, which is $50,000. So again, 6% of her overall pay, $50,000, is boom, that $250 per month. Okay. Then you have her fixed expenses or her essential expenses. So as you can see right here, 27% of her check, she stayed under the magic number of 30%. That's going towards just strictly like housing. Then it breaks down all her other essential costs right here. And then we move down to discretionary expenses as well. Okay. So you see, she has that breakdown. Her breakdown is a little different than 20, 60, 20. You see her breakdown is 15, 54, 31. Now, if I ran into Jessica and I was going through these numbers, what would I tell her, right? Again, it's all about habits, right? So it's a good thing that she's in the habit of putting money away, right? Because that means that the act of putting money away is normal to her. So me being able to explain like, hey, saving money and things of that nature, not spending all your money, she already knows that. And so from a planning perspective, what we're able to do is chart out a course and really say, okay, here's what we really can accomplish because you've already got the habit, right? You already conceptually understand like, okay, when I receive money, don't spend it all. So now that we have a goal, we can chart that course on how to get there. And chances are we're going to get there. Okay. So this right here is a page from our planning software. And what it does, it just kind of breaks down, all right, of your cash flow, like where is it coming from? Okay. So I don't want to get too detailed and technical into this because this is when it starts getting kind of boring and people's eyes glaze over. Unless you're just one of those super technical people. I have clients like that who they're like, nah, like, we want to go through the 60-page report. And it's like, okay, we can do that. But yeah, so as you can see, it's just breaking down very simply like where her money is coming from. And so that green represents her salary, basically. Okay. But like I said, I don't really want to spend a whole lot of time on like the planning software because I kind of feel like that's like a separate conversation, but we'll keep it big picture for now. So here's another example right here with a young family. And what I want you to see is just basically how the percentages, right? They're a little different, but they're still like pretty close. And that's what I'm saying. Like income doesn't really change behaviors. If you were a saver, again, making $50,000 like Jessica, right? Well, chances are when you make 2, 3, 4 times that amount of money, you're still going to have those same habits. You're just making more money. Okay. So breaking this down with Brandon and Courtney being a young family, you see they're saving a little bit more money. So 22% of their money is going towards savings. When we look at their fixed expenses, gotta pronunciate my words. You see right here, it's pretty much the same as what Jessica was. Okay. Kind of going back to what I was saying about like, you're pretty much going to, again, you're pretty much going to spend the same way when it comes to like 80, 20 or 20, 60, 20, right? It's pretty much going to fall within the same range. And as you can see for housing, they're at 26%. So again, under that magic number of 30%. And they're discretionary, they're at 22%. Okay. So the same exact thing here. This is just a breakdown of like what their cash flow looks like in like a more technical, detailed manner. But again, not going to spend a whole lot of time on that. So developing a plan for savings and investing. I really like this part because I always tell people the simple fact of the matter is when it comes to financial planning, and I want everybody to make sure that they really kind of grasp this, okay? You cannot just save your way to retirement. Again, you cannot just save your way to retirement. What I mean by saying that is I can't just say I'm just going to take whatever money that I'm saving, throw it in the bank, okay? Like literally throw it in a savings account, close my eyes for 35 years, wake up when I'm 65, say, you know what, I'm ready to retire now, and take all my money out of the bank, and that's going to be enough. That's not how this game works, okay? That's not how it works, okay? We have to have our money working for us. That's where putting your money in vehicles that are going to earn interest, okay? That's where that comes into play. And that's why that's so powerful, because interest can be used for you or can be used against you. When you think about debt, interest is basically being used against you, okay? When you think about investing, interest is used for your benefit, okay? So let's kind of look into this right here, okay? So what's the difference between savings and investing? Saving is setting aside money to access in the short term or an emergency. That's the best way I could put it. Savings is just money that you have not spent yet. That's really what it boils down to, okay? All right. So continue on reading right here. So it is money that you cannot risk losing in exchange for safety, okay? And now we look at investing. Investing, on the other hand, is putting your money into a vehicle that carries more risk, okay? So we think saving money in a bank, we think safe money, right? The safest money you can have because it's insured through the bank, okay? Now, it's not really going to grow. It's just going to be accessible to you, all right? But with investing, we are going into an arena now where it's like, hey, we are expected to take on a potential risk of losing money, okay? So you see here, investing, on the other hand, is putting your money into a vehicle that carries more risk with the potential for a greater gain in value. In exchange for your tolerance of fluctuations in the value of your money and the potential that you could lose money, okay, you may be rewarded over a longer time horizon with a greater return than you would have if you made your money in a traditional savings account. Now, I like to have these conversations with people where, I'm really walking through investing. One of the first questions that comes up is, how often do people lose money? All right. Well, if we're talking about investing in the stock market in a responsible way, you're really not going to lose money. Okay. And then if we combine that with just like historical context, again, it puts people at ease who kind of have a level of like anxiety around investing and all that goes into it. I say that because when you think about investing, specifically if you're investing for the long term, you're going to be in a better predicament. Give you an example. So you could look at the stock market. You can look at the history of the stock market since 1926. And you can say, well, over, certain time spans, there have to be trends, right? Yes, you would be correct. So here we go. So if you looked at any 15-year increment when it comes to investing since 1926, the stock market has been up 100% of the time. Okay. What does that mean? It just simply means if we're investing for a long time, and I would consider 15 years or longer a long time, right? Okay. Like your money's going to grow. Okay. If you roll that back, let's talk 5-year increments. If we're talking 5-year increments, on average, your money is up 86% of the time. If we roll that back to 1-year averages, the market is up 73% of the time. Okay. To kind of add a little bit more historical context to that conversation. So there's really only been one 5-year period where the market was down for 5 years. And that was the Great Depression. So we're talking 1929 to 1934. Okay. Outside of that, we've never had another 5-year increment where the market has been down. So again, that's just showing you long term, or the longer we have for investing, hey, the higher chance that our money is going to be up, right? Now, if you were kind of thinking about that in terms of like what it would look like in reality, right? So it would look like a roller coaster. If you kind of plotted that out on a chart, you would see the market is essentially going like this, right? But just like I was doing, it's trending up. So the whole time it's waving, right? But it's trending up. All right. You're going to have fluctuations. If you look at this year alone, there's been a ton of fluctuation. If you kind of look at the first 4 months of the year versus the previous or the last 4 months that have just passed, we're talking two totally different stories here when it comes to investing. So again, investing for the long haul is something that plays to your advantage. Okay. So the longer time horizon we have for investing, the better we are. Okay. And so this right here is just breaking down like what happens in a traditional savings account, So as you can see, this person put $1,000 in a traditional savings account. They got an interest rate of 0.2%. And so what they're saying is in 10 years, that $1,000 would have grown to $1,020.18, which again, we're going back to what I was saying. You can't save your way to retirement. You just cannot do it. Okay. All right. Investing, on the other hand, if you did the same exact thing, except you put it in an investment account, you got a 7% annual return. You see that you started off with $1,000, but your money grew to almost $2,000. Okay. So significant difference. So investing is a good thing. We're just going to do it responsibly. That's very simple. Okay. All right. So a few other things. So establishing an emergency fund. Again, this is your savings. Everybody's going to have a little bit of a different view. Specifically, if you're talking to different advisors, some advisors say 2 months. Some advisors say 9 months. I've even ran into a few advisors who recommend their clients have a full year's worth of emergency funding. So everybody's going to be a little bit different. From me, I'm saying not necessarily a number of months. I'm more so giving people like a range, okay, a dollar amount. So minimally, I would say $5,000 is what you would want to work towards to having in savings. A maximum is probably like $10,000 more than that, right? I would say somewhere between 5,000 to 15,000 is where you want to land in regards to what you have in cash savings. Anything above that, obviously, that needs to be put towards vehicles that are going to be actively making you more money. Okay. All right. So contributing to your 401k. So I want to kind of pause on that one because I'm going to go to a different form to explain that one a little bit more. Okay. So let me come back to that. This right here, this will be covered on the next form that I go to as well. It's just breaking down the different types of investing vehicles that you can utilize. So it's just like a good, like kind of like simple mashup of, hey, what are the different accounts that are available to me? Okay. So let me hop over to this one right here. So this is a nice little one pager that I like going over with people because really, again, it captures the big picture. And that's what I like to talk about. Let's talk about the big picture. Once we have like the overall goal of what we're working towards, let's now work backwards. Okay. All right. So last week I covered these in gold. This week I want to cover like, all right, what is the strategy for growing our money here? Okay. So we focused on building the foundation, but now how do we take it to the next level? Right. All right. So all of these are kind of laid out in very strategic ways. I say that because if we could draw imaginary lines, right, the lines would be in between, just like I'm doing with the mouse. Okay. And what that would represent is time. Okay. So corridors of time. What I mean by that is this: these three accounts right here, these are accounts that you would be able to utilize very quickly. Checking account, savings account, you put your money in there today, you can get your money tomorrow. Okay. Technically, you get it even faster than that. I mean, you could pull up your phone right now, go to whatever banking app you use, and let's say you wanted to transfer some money from your savings to your checking account, you could do it instantly. Okay. All right. A certificate of deposit, so a CD. A CD, typically you got 1 year CDs, 2 year CDs, 3 year CDs, 4 year CDs. So CDs essentially are, again, they're bank products. Okay. And the way that it works is you put some money in this CD. The bank basically promises you, if you hand us this money for, let's say, for example, for 2 years, right? You can't touch the money. Okay. During that 2 year span. In return, the bank will pay you interest on that money. Now, the interest is not going to be very high. So we're talking less than 2%. Okay. But that's the way that it works. After that 2 year period is over, boom, you get your money plus the interest that is earned. Okay. All right. So now moving over to these two boxes right here. So you have investment accounts, you have mutual funds. So what we have right here is what I like to call your midterm money. Okay. And I'll actually throw in the cash value life insurance in that conversation as well. What I mean by that is think about it in regards to where do you put your money? Always think about when would you need to touch the money. That's really how you want to think about where should I put my money at? Okay. So for example, if I said, hey, I plan on taking a trip in 5 months. Hey, that's money that I'm going to need relatively quickly. I'm going to put that inside of, again, a checking or a savings account. But if I said, hey, I'm going to put some money away from retirement. Well, I've got, over 30 years until I reach, my mid 60s. So I wouldn't put that money inside of a savings account. I'm talking about a retirement account. Okay. So you kind of have those two extremes: the money I touch today, the money I touch in, the way down the road future. But then we have all the space in between, right? And so that's where these other accounts come into play: the investment account, the mutual funds, the cash value life insurance. Those are the accounts where we can put money in and we can say, I don't want to touch this money today representing, I'd say, any time between now and 2 years, right? But I do want to touch this money sometime after that, whether we're talking 2 to 10 years, whether we're talking 10 to 20 years, or, 10 to 30 years, right? So the mutual fund and the investment account, really what that is we're putting money in what is essentially called a short-term investment account. Some people might call it a general investment account. And it kind of gives you the best of both worlds. I say that because you have access to your money that's very similar to a checking or a savings account. Now it's not equivalent. So remember the example I said with the savings account is basically I can touch my money anytime I want, right? Well, with a general investment account, it's going to take you probably about 3 to 4 business days before you can actually get your hands on any funds that you put inside of that account. Okay. But it also gives you the upside of being invested in the market. So you're earning interest, okay? Interest that's going to be able to work on your behalf, be noticeable to you is probably a good way to put it, right? Um, so you're getting the best of both worlds. You're getting exposure to the stock market because you are investing in an investment fund or a mutual fund, but at the same time, you do have access to your money. All right. Okay. When you think about cash value life insurance, so this one is a very interesting piece right here. I say that because um, I'm a firm believer that cash value life insurance has a place in everyone's financial plan, and it's because you can do so much with it. Um, it's not like the insurance that we kind of see advertised on television, where it'll say, hey, Bob has a family of five. He's 55 years old, and for $100 a month, he can get $500,000 of coverage. We're not talking about that insurance. That's called term life insurance. Okay. What this right here is talking about, cash value life insurance, is going to operate more like a home. What I mean by that is very simply, just like with a home, you're paying your mortgage every year. What is happening is you're building up cash equity inside of your home. Okay. And you can access that cash inside of your home the same way that this life insurance policy works, where you're paying your premium every single year and you're building up cash value that you can access while you're alive. Okay. And so that's another place where you can put money at where, hey, it's going to grow. And the cool thing about it is it's not tied to the market at all. So I do have clients that are saying, hey, I'm a little more on the conservative side. Not really that comfortable with using the stock market. Is there an alternative, right? And so, like, I always make sure to tell people, well, life insurance is, at the end of the day, life insurance, but it does have like a wealth building component. And so what happens is that becomes a part of their overall plan. And it has a lot of advantages to it. Okay. But again, this is going to be one of those midterm places to put money at, where we don't really want to try to access it too early. But at the same time, if we're talking 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, it's going to be there for us to access. Okay. Now, when we're looking at these three on the right, so these are our retirement accounts. Okay. So we got 401k, Roth 401k, we got IRA, Roth IRA, and we got annuities. So let's start with annuities first, because that one's pretty like cut and dry. So if anybody is familiar with a pension is just very simply, let's say I've worked for a company for a certain period of time. So say I've been with the company for 25 years. I plan on retiring. The company says, because you have been with us for so long, okay, and the company will list out how many years you have to be a part of their team. So let's say 25 years of service. What we will do is we will pay you a portion of your salary in retirement in the form of, again, a salary, but it'll be a retirement salary, right? You will receive this salary every single year until you pass away. That's a pension. Okay. So it's just guaranteed money in retirement. That's a simplified way to explain it. An annuity is the exact same thing as that. The only difference is a pension has to come through an employer. An annuity is something that you set up individually yourself. Okay. An annuity is another piece or another tool that I am a firm believer every single person needs an annuity in their financial plan. That is because when you talk about retirement, the reality is we're not going back to work. Okay. So now we only have to live off of what we have put away, right? And at the end of the day, people want guarantees. Okay. If I could guarantee you, you're going to get $5,000 the first of the month, every single month to the day you pass away, most people would take that deal. That's what an annuity represents, guaranteed money. Okay. All right. So now we look at IRAs, Roth IRAs. So for starters, IRA is just fancy talk for individual retirement account. That's all that means. It just means that I myself set up this retirement account. Okay. IRA. That's all. Now, an IRA is taxed the same way as a 401k, and a Roth IRA is taxed the same way as a Roth 401k. The difference between them, okay, in regards to a 401k versus IRA is, again, 401k has to come through an employer, and typically a 401k has a match, meaning you put in a certain percentage, your employer puts in a certain percentage as well. An IRA is just all you. The only contributions that go in are your contributions. That's it. Okay. The other thing to note is how much you can put in the account. In an IRA, you can put significantly less in the account versus a 401k, you put significantly more into that account. So that's another thing to keep in mind whenever we're talking about accumulating wealth and retirement accounts and what should we use. Okay. A Roth IRA and a Roth 401k, the way that it is taxed is the money that you put in there is taxed today. So that down the road, when you want to withdraw it in retirement, that money is not taxed again. Okay. So imagine you were putting in, let's just say $100 a month. You put in $100 a month, that money is taxed today as it goes into the account. Fast forward, 15, 20, 25 years, that money has grown to over $500,000. Guess what? When you take that money out, there's no tax on that money because you've already been taxed up front. With a 401k and an IRA, it's the exact opposite. Okay. What I mean by that is the money goes into it, no taxes. So the money has not been taxed at all. So pre-tax is the accurate way of depicting it. So it goes in pre-tax, meaning it hasn't been taxed yet. So again, imagine that you're putting in $100 a month. Your money is not being taxed. Okay. Fast forward 25 years in retirement. We now say, hey, our account has grown to $750,000. I want to pull out some or all of that money. Well, guess what? Every single dollar that you pull out of that 401k or that IRA is taxable. Okay. Because, hey, the government wrote the rules on taxes. You cannot escape taxes. Okay. You can minimize taxes, but you cannot escape them. Okay. But I don't say that to deter you. I say that just so you understand. Okay. And kind of like another way to kind of understand and wrap your head around financial planning, specifically around like a 401k, most people are going to have a 401k. And most advisors are going to advise that you use your 401k. Now, obviously, if you have a Roth 401k, if you have access to one through an employer, we would most likely advise you to probably use that one, especially if you're younger. But those are just vehicles that are available to you that, again, are going to play a significant part inside of your financial plan. And so did a little time check. Looks like we're at 7:48. So let's see. Do we want to start with the Q&A or anything like that? I'll stop sharing my screen.
Well, why don't you, because I think you're still going to talk, you still have debt management and protect so let's go ahead and finish.
Okay. Okay. I'll share it again. Give me one quick moment.
Okay.
All right. So, yeah. So I'll go back here. So being strategic about debt management. So most people are going to have debt. The key is understanding your debt, prioritizing your debt. And so I like to jump down here where it says prioritizing your debts. So begin with high interest rate credit cards. So never make just the minimum payment. The reason being is because if you have like a debt that has a high interest rate tied to it. So let's use a credit card and let's say that you have a 20% interest rate on that credit card. Well, if you're paying the minimum, okay, what'll happen is like you're not taking into account the interest. So what they're charging you to have a balance. That's basically the best way to explain it. Okay. So they're charging you 20% of whatever the balance is that you owe. And they're adding that to your debt. Okay. And so that's why it states, hey, begin with paying down those high interest rate credit cards, because the interest that you're accruing over time is adding on to your actual balance. So in paying the minimum balance, it's actually going to take you longer to pay off a debt versus if you kind of went at it in a strategic fashion and said, I want to pay this amount towards the debt each month. Okay. Focusing on non-deductible debt next. So I really like this part right here because it talks about kind of like after we're done with paying off credit card balances, it talks about paying off things that you're not going to get some sort of tax incentive or tax break on. So we're talking about car loans, we're talking about personal loans. You don't get any tax advantages, okay, on the interest that accrues. So for example, if you're paying a student loan, right? Well, the interest that you're paying for that particular year, you can write off that interest on your taxes. Okay. But for a car loan, right? If I paid, let's say I had $3,000 left on a car, and let's say that $2,000 of it was the principal balance, $1,000 was the interest that accrued. Well, if I pay off that $3,000 balance, there's nothing for me to write off. Okay. Because it's a non-deductible debt. All right. Additional payments on deductible debts come last. So deductible debt includes mortgages, home equity loans, and qualified student loans. Interest paid on these loans may be deductible on your income taxes if you itemize. Okay. So this is, again, kind of a tax question. So didn't want to get too deep in the woods on that one. But one of the things that I come across a lot, people always ask me, well, should I pay more, on my mortgage, right? And I always say, well, if we've got other debts, let's take care of those first, because of the fact that the interest that you're paying on your mortgage is, again, deductible. Okay. All right. So this leads us to the fourth piece. And with this piece right here, me personally, I think this is the cornerstone of any financial plan. Very simply, how do we protect your assets? We protect your assets by making sure that you have life insurance and disability protection or disability insurance. The reason why I say that is because, all right, with life insurance, to kind of put it into perspective of how I think about it, when you pass away, it's like ripping off a Band-Aid. I say that because it's like you're gone. Okay. You're not here anymore. So like whatever you had going on, like it's done for. Okay. Life insurance comes into place to make sure we take care of anything that you left behind. With disability protection, though, it's a different story because it's like a ripple effect. Okay, so imagine like dropping something in a bucket of water and watching the ripples. That's how a disability plays out, because a disability hits you everywhere. What I mean by that is you can be disabled, whether we're talking about a physical injury, a mental incapacity, or a mental disorder, or we're talking about a sickness that keeps you out of work for at least 3 months. Okay. What it affects, though, is it affects what's going on at that moment. Okay. It also affects what's going on in the future, though. I say that because if I was working and let's say I had a disability and I was out for a year, I lost a year of income immediately, right? Like in real time, I lost a year of income. Okay. At the same time, though, let's say I was investing, I was saving, I was putting money away. Well, I lost out on earning interest on the money that I would have put away. Okay. So you see, it's like a ripple effect, because I could track that and I could say, well, you may have lost out on, $10,000 that you were going to, invest for that year. but that's just for that year. If I then compound that, I could show you over 25, 30 years, that $10,000 that you lost in that little time span, reality is you actually lost a much bigger number, maybe like $160,000. Okay. So protecting your income with disability insurance is critically important. And the last thing that I'll say on that is most people have access to a disability plan through their employer. Okay. With that being said, it is not a comprehensive plan. It is a partial plan. Most employers only cover you at 60% of your salary. Okay. And if you're someone who makes a lot of money, so typically if you're someone who makes, at least $5,000 a month or more, you might want to check the fine print, because typically the way those group policies are designed through an employer, you're actually capped. So it's typically saying something like, we'll cover you at 60% of your salary or $5,000 a month. So if you make more than $5,000 a month, you see you're actually receiving less than 60%. Okay. So my job is to come behind whatever your employer is offering and give you the difference. If they're offering you 60% coverage, my job is to mend that gap. Okay. Give you the extra 40%. So that way, in the event that something happens, you become disabled, guess what? You can focus on recovering. You don't have to focus on the financial aspect, because there's money still coming in. We're still able to save. We're still able to invest. We're still able to pay off debt. All those things are still a reality. Okay. So even when, again, it's not an ideal situation because nobody wants to go through a disability. Okay. I'll tell you personally, I've had at least 7 disability claims in my short tenure as an advisor. None of those calls I'm excited to receive, but I am excited that, again, we had a plan. And because we had a plan, even though it was not an ideal situation, we didn't panic. Okay. So I'll pause it right there and open up for questions.
Thank you, Brandon. So I don't have any questions on YouTube, but Felicia, do you have, I think we might have a question on Zoom.
Yes, I have one question from Jerry. It says, are the gains on the money put in a Roth IRA taxed?
So the answer to that, Jerry, is no. Okay. The gains are not taxed. So to give you an example, say that you contributed, $30,000 into a Roth IRA. Let's say that $30,000 over a span of time grew to $90,000, right? Well, the taxable amount was the $30,000 that you put in. The gain was the $60,000. Okay. So in total, you have $90,000 in there. That $60,000 is not taxable. Okay. Because the money that you put in was already taxed. So I hope that answered your question.
So I'm seeing that we don't have any additional questions, but I like to summarize because you gave us a lot of great information. So really you gave us 4 steps. The first step is understanding your cash flow, and you gave us a generic idea from a percentage wise where our cash flow should be going. So 60% essential expenses. And if you're going to get your essential expenses at 60%, that housing cost got to be at least under 30% to make that work. Then 20% of savings and investing. You gave us a great idea for a saving and investing plan. And then 20% for your discretionary income, kind of like your fund money. Mm-hmm. The second step is a saving and investing plan. And I really like you said that we cannot save our way into retirement. And I really like that you gave a great example, the interest that we would get in a savings account, which is essentially nothing, a time frame, versus if we actually use an investment vehicle to save and gain a lot of that compound interest on our way to retirement. And you got to have a plan to make that happen. You also gave us several investment vehicles where your money can go from investing from a long-term standpoint. And you also mentioned the cash value usage for whole life policies that could be considered for mid-term goals. So I appreciate that. And then you gave us for step 3, debt management and how important that is, debt under control. And another thing I wanted to note when it comes to debt management is a lot of times we spend so much of our money and our cash flow on payments. It does not give us the opportunity to really invest. And so we waste a lot of time making car payments and, payments on furniture and, to invest. And I like how you said that debt is money and interest that's working against you versus investing is allowing you to have money to work for you. And then lastly, you gave us what you consider to be the cornerstone, and that is you can do steps 1 through 3 and have a disability incident that will completely nullify everything that you have to do. So it's very important. Probably the most important thing to do is to make sure you have the right amount of insurance so that you are protecting what you're building from a wealth standpoint. Did I summarize it the way you would say?
That was excellent.
Okay. Well, I think you did a wonderful job again, and I will be using you in the future for other things. And let's see if there's anything else. Do you have any final words that you want to mention before we log off?
Again, I would just say that I kind of ended with this last time, so I'll end with it again. Financial planning is something that is for everyone. I tell people it doesn't matter if you are, the person who just landed their first, entry level job, or you are the person who's making $5 million, right? Give you a perfect example, like Bill Gates, one of the most wealthiest people in the world, he has a financial advisor. Okay. The creators of Nike have a financial advisor. Jeff Bezos has a financial advisor. Okay. My favorite basketball player, Kevin Durant, has a financial advisor. I always bring that up to people to say, what makes Kevin Durant so special as a person, right? Not as an athlete. We're not talking about that, but as a person where he deserves to have a financial advisor, but someone like me can't, right? I'm a financial advisor and I have a financial advisor. Okay. Because at the end of the day, we're emotional about our money, right? We are directly emotionally tied to our money. So we need someone there as a support system, as a cheerleader, as an accountability partner to be able to help us kind of chart through, the stuff that goes on up here when we think about money, right? So I'm a big advocate for, everyone having a financial advisor. And, shameless plug for me, I work with people all across the United States. I have clients here in North Carolina. I have clients all the way in California. So I'm all over the place. I'm all over the place. Zoom has made.
I just thought of a question for you. How can the material that you presented was really great? Is that something that's available to the public, and how can they get a copy of that?
Yeah. So I could email it out if someone shot me an email at Brandon.Hunter. So BRANDON, Brandon.Hunter, HUNTER at N as in Nancy, M as in money.com.
Okay. And we'll also on our financial literacy blog, nabafinancialliteracy.com, we'll also post your email address on there as well. And I have one more comment from your final thought that I thought so important to mention. What we're talking about here is using money as a tool to create enough financial security, and wealth is where you'll have your and find your financial security. And I think as a community, we spend a lot of time thinking about income. It's like, I want to make more money, but we don't think about what we do with the money when we get it. And so I my little shameless plug too with our new motto when it comes to making wealth. I mean, everyone knows, the little saying, if it don't make dollars, it don't make sense. We at NABA says, if it don't make wealth, it's not making sense. So we'll end on that note that making wealth is what really makes sense. And so I want people to be more wealth-minded and less consumer focused. That's my final thoughts on that. But we do thank you, Brandon, for that great presentation. Thank you so much, Felicia, for all of your assistance, just even joining on the call and giving us a hand with any Q&A questions. And I also want to just say how much I appreciate you helping me get everything kicked off for the fall. I don't think I could have done it without you as my sounding board. Anyway, I want you guys to stay tuned for next month. You don't want to miss next month. Next month, we have 2 sessions, and we're going to talk about your credit score, how to increase your credit score, and we're going to even talk about how to decode the black box, so to speak, of how your credit scores are being calculated behind the scenes and what you need to do for your debt management strategy to improve your credit score. So that will be in October for our October session. So please stay tuned for that. Also, keep our blog in mind, www.nabafinancialliteracy.com, for any future updates. Thank you guys again, and I think it's a wrap.
Okay. Thank you all. Have a good evening.
Thanks.